CEOs are warning that 2023 could be the year from hell. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. What's happening, guys? What's going on YouTube? You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels, and we're going to be talking about kind of the state of the economy, how ugly 2023 could get. We got a lot of different stuff to talk about today. We're going to be talking about housing, what's going on in housing right now. What is the housing market going to look like in 2023? There's some really, really kind of scary numbers floating around out there right now. We're going to be talking about credit card debt and the percentage of Americans struggling. Over 70% of Americans are struggling to pay grocery bills. Over 83% of Americans are relying on coupons or some type of loyalty program to put food on the table. When you look at inflation, we talked about Black Friday, and I said Black Friday numbers were pretty pathetic if you actually take into account inflation. A lot of people kind of poo-pooed me and was like, oh, inflation's only 7%, inflation's only 9%. Just a couple consumer staples, just a couple things I'm guessing most of us buy. Coffee is up 14%. Cereal is up 17%. Eggs are up 43%. That's 43%. That's kind of cutting into people's disposable income, and people are burning through savings. We've talked about savings rates are at like 17-year lows or something like that. It might even be all-time lows. The amount of credit card debt people are racking up is crazy. If you look at last year, 2 years ago, everybody was fighting over freight shipments from China. The cost of a container went from like $2,000 to $17,000. I think some people were even paying as much as $25,000. The freight shipping from China to the West Coast is down 90% just in the last year. Carvana looks like they're about to go bankrupt and go out of business. The used car market looks like it's about to implode. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, kind of getting into some of these stories and some of these stats, but I just kind of wanted to prepare you guys for kind of what we're going to be getting into here. Now, one thing I'd drop a comment, let me know about this. One thing I want to hear from you guys, when you watch, what do you call this kind of content I'm making? This is like doom scrolling or doom porn. When you're consuming this type of content, I'm kind of curious to hear from you guys, because I consume this type of content as well. But what's your mindset when you watch a video like mine or Jay Bravo or Stephen Van Meter or any number of other guys out there? Like, are you watching it because you want to know what's going on in the world? Are you fearful and you want to know how to prepare? Is it just kind of like a thought exercise in how bad things could really get? You just want to kind of hear different people's takes. Let me know what you're thinking about when you watch this type of content, why you watch this type of content. I'd be curious to kind of hear from you guys. I think for me, it's kind of a combination of all of these things. I don't mean to be like sensational. I know, everyone's trying to get views, and the more sensational or crazy or scary you can make something, the more clicks you're going to get, the more views you're going to get. But I think it's important to realize that like we're potentially in a very dangerous situation, but that doesn't mean the world's going to fall apart and we're going to be living in a society like The Walking Dead, right? It's kind of like I was watching an interview with Mike Rowe, the guy who does the Dirty Job show, and he's also the narrator for the what's the crab show in the Bering Sea. He was kind of talking about the stats. So when the crab season is a 6-week season. And when they go out into the Bering Sea, over the course of 6 weeks, 8 people are going to die. The ratio or rate at which people are going to be injured is 100%. So literally everybody who goes out there is going to get injured. Maybe it's just a broken finger, maybe it's some stitches, but everybody going out there is going to get injured. The number of people who are going to have a serious injury is like 30 or 40%. And there we're talking about something that potentially is going to like maim you for life, or you're going to be airlifted off the ship. It's a very, very dangerous thing. Now, when these boats set off from Dutch Harbor, everybody's not screaming, oh my God, we're all going to die. But at the same time, they realize that they're entering a very dangerous situation. I think as we go into 2023, that's kind of the way to kind of look at this. So when you watch my videos that are, I don't want to say fear-mongering because all of this stuff is a reality, but when you watch my videos, don't think, or Stephen Van Meter or Jay Bravo or whoever else, don't necessarily think, oh my gosh, these people are just talking crazy for clicks and views and they want to make this as sensational as possible. Look at it like kind of the Bering Sea analogy. We're setting ourselves up for a very, very dangerous situation. And, we might wind up coming back okay. We might not be one of those boats that winds up losing a guy. I may not be the guy who winds up dying, but we are heading into a very, very dangerous situation. That's kind of what's happening with where we're going in 2023. I started this video by saying that CEOs are saying 2023 could be the year from hell. Now, we've heard from the Fed. The Fed's been wrong about everything, and there isn't going to be inflation. Inflation's transitory. Okay, it's going to stick around for a little bit, but we're going to get it down. Pretty much all the talking heads, the Fed, everybody who's supposed to know what's going on has been wrong about everything and been clueless, right? Excuse me for the pause. I get so hoarse when I make these videos. This isn't a conversation. This is me talking nonstop for 20 or 30 minutes. I'm going to be taking some breaks here to drink a little bit of water and hit my little THC pen here. So, CEOs are essentially, part of their job is predicting the future. Yeah, they solve problems. They come up with creative solutions. They bring value, but part of their job is predicting the future. So how many units are we going to sell this year? Let's give some guidance to our stockholders. What areas of our industry do we need to be doubling down on and moving into? How many workers do we need? How much do we need in raw materials? How much inventory do we need? CEOs are kind of paid to kind of predict the future. And if CEOs are saying that 2023 could be the year from hell, you probably want to listen to them. Markets continue to struggle. The markets were down big today. They finished up not too much down, but consistently we're seeing lower highs and lower lows. Let's talk a little bit about housing. I think I might wind up buying a house or a couple here if things turn down. I've been shopping for houses down in Florida since just prior to the Mexican beer cough situation. And I wouldn't mind getting a different house here. I'll, probably wind up keeping the house that I'm in right now as a rental. But, it's always been my dream to have a big backyard, like a half-acre backyard or even a couple of acres. And, I've been seeing some houses with half-acre lots, decent houses going for about $250, which, if we just go back a year or two, you couldn't find anything for under $300,000, $350,000. And that's not even necessarily something nice, but just like any house with a decent-sized yard that's in livable condition. So we're starting to see home prices pull back a little bit. But I think we haven't even begun to see the beginning of it. And when I talk about my housing market, Florida is just absolutely crazy. I think Florida is still going up. I live in Illinois. Illinois is not a very desirable place to live. We have a ton of corruption. We had really heavy-handed lockdowns from 2020 to 2022. We saw a lot of people wanted to leave states like Illinois and California and New York. And go to places like Florida and Texas, even though everyone says, oh, Florida, Texas, they're fascist, blah, 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 what a bunch of backwards hillbillies. It's kind of funny that all the liberals from California, New York, Illinois were all vacationing down in Florida. And it's interesting that everybody's moving down to Florida, even though a lot of people talk shit about Florida and Texas. But my housing market didn't see the big run up, so I don't think we're going to see as much of a crash. But I definitely think things are going to pull back. Let's talk about the housing index. The housing index has declined to 33. This is the lowest level in a decade, and historically, anything under a housing index of 50 spells trouble. And we're starting to see some articles out there. I think one article was from The Hill today, and they were making the argument that the housing collapse has already begun. There's some decent deals out there now, but I think in the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to see some really amazing deals, big discounts coming. And some people are saying this could be the biggest housing crash ever. I don't know that it's going to be worse than 2008, but things could get pretty ugly. Another stat we saw from an article today, I forget which publication this one was from, but we recently learned that 270,000 home buyers who bought their homes in 2022 are underwater. So that means they owe more money than their house is worth. I know a lot of people say, well, if you can make the payments, it's fine. You have nothing to worry about. But what happens if the economy really takes a turn for the worse in 2023 and you are out of a job? And that's one of the problems, right? Nobody really looks at the total price of the house. Everybody kind of looks at what's the payment. And right now with where interest rates are right now, a house that you could have bought for $500,000 2 years ago, the same payment would maybe get you a house for $350,000 today. Also, people are losing equity in their homes. So for a while, we kind of saw home prices shoot up, and it was like, people who bought in 2020 or 2021, they got low interest rates, and worst comes to worst, they have enough equity to where they can pay the realtor fees and wind up walking away from the house. But we're already seeing a pullback in home prices. These people are losing equity day by day. And if home prices continue to slump, some of these people who, if they were to want to get out, are probably going to have to take a loss to get out. Another thing to kind of consider just in terms of the overall economy. So the housing industry employs a ton of people. You have realtors, you have people who stage houses, you have mortgage brokers, you have underwriters. I mean, the housing industry is a giant industry, right? All of us need a place to live. All of us need a house. All of us need a roof over our heads. And so, this affects all of us, but think about how big the housing market is. And if housing tanks and the housing market sees layoffs, how many people are going to be out of work? How many families are going to be struggling? And all the businesses that they frequent, all the things that they spent their money on, they're not going to have money to spend on those things. They're not going to be able to support the businesses that they support. And that's going to have a ripple effect on the rest of the economy. It seems like these days everybody needs the 3,000 square foot McMansion and, the $250,000 SUVs in the driveway. And I think a lot of people are living beyond their means. Let's talk about credit card debt, savings rates, all that kind of stuff. So credit card debt has hit an all-time high, as in like all-time ever in history. Saving rates are at a 17-year low. I already kind of touched on this, but 70% of households are struggling to pay grocery bills. And another thing that we saw is even wealthy people are starting to shop at discount grocers like Aldi, Dollar Store, Dollar General, etc. A while back we saw that, lower middle class and people on the lower rungs of wages in the economy were struggling. But the people who were wealthy were still doing okay, and they were still buying luxury goods. They were still buying cars, boats, designer purses, all this kind of stuff. But we're starting to see that a lot of people who typically maybe shopped at Whole Foods are starting to shop at Aldi instead. So moving into 2023, I think a lot of these kind of like value stores, whether it be Walmart, Dollar General, etc. I think these businesses could do really well because not only are the poor people and the middle class people going to be shopping there, but also the wealthy people who are now struggling are also maybe going to be shopping at Walmart as opposed to Whole Foods. Let's see, where were we here? So, overall, we live in a consumer economy, and consumers are kind of screwed. It's pretty apparent. I think I kind of touched on this stat at the intro to this video, but according to Fox Business, 83% of people are relying on coupons or loyalty programs to put food on the table. I kind of touched on this as well, but coffee up 14%, cereal up 17%, eggs up 43%. We can go across any number of other things, rice, milk, lunch meat, whatever else. Everything is up. And substantially higher than the 7% or 9% inflation that the Fed and the government tells us things are up. I think people, for a long time, people found inflation to be annoying, but it wasn't really changing people's spending habits. People still were taking vacations. We're still buying things. We're still, eating a ton of meat, still buying brand name food brands and things like that. You're now starting to see people, and not even poor people, even, middle class, upper middle class people. People are trying to maybe not buy all the name brand stuff. People are trying to eat a little bit less meat. People are trying to find ways to save. Here's a huge expense for people. So car insurance rates are going to jump 7% in 2023. In 2022, car insurance rates jumped 9%. So that's a 16% spike in a little over a year. And that's on top of gas prices are up, vehicle prices are up. Everything is costing more, but that one really jumped out at me. A 7% increase in car insurance in 2023, and last year it was 9%. 16% in 2 years is pretty substantial. And even though you're hearing all this bad news and how high prices are, keep in mind the tough times, the difficult times have not even started. Jamie Dimon was talking about how people are going to run out of money mid-2023. I think most people are already running out of money. And another thing to kind of throw out there, I believe we're in a recession. Drop a comment, let me know what you believe. But Jamie Dimon does not even believe we're in a recession. and look how bad things are. Look how much people are struggling. We're potentially at the beginning of a pretty severe multi-year-long recession or even a depression. I kind of touched on this at the intro to this video. Freight rates are from China are down 90%. Global trade has fallen off of a cliff. What does that tell us that freight rates from China to the West Coast are down? That means stores like Walmart, Target, Kohl's, etc. These businesses are not ordering inventory from China, and as we know, everything comes from China. So if they're not ordering inventory from China, a few people have moved their manufacturing to India or even Mexico, but overall, most of our goods come from China. And these companies are either ordering less, they're canceling orders, they're ordering nothing at all, and that could potentially be a canary in a coal mine for the economy. Let's talk about used vehicles. Used vehicle demand is down and used vehicle prices are down. There's something called the Manheim Used Vehicle Index, and that's declined about 16%. And, I think it's already like this, but as we move forward, less people are going to be able to qualify for loans. Less people are going to have the money to buy cars. Less people are going to have the credit to buy cars. And think about, all of the dealerships, all of the people at the dealerships employ, all of the companies who make parts for vehicles, everything that kind of revolves around the car industry. If layoffs hit that industry, that's a lot of people who, again, there's going to be a ripple effect where these people lose their jobs. They're struggling. They're not going to be spending the money in the economy that they spent before. And all of this is going to have ripple effects potentially in 2023. We could be in a situation where we're experiencing inflation and deflation all at the same time. Let's see, what do we got here? Let's talk a little bit about crypto. What is your guys' opinion of crypto? Do you still hold crypto? Have you sold your crypto? Do you think now's the time to buy? Do you think things will continue to go lower? I'm kind of surprised that crypto has held up as well as it has. I'm kind of surprised we're not at like $8,000 Bitcoin right now, although I'm pretty sure we will be in 2023. We can revisit the video and see if I was right or wrong about this. This was an interesting stat, though. Just 8% of Americans have a positive view of crypto right now. So, as the old Warren Buffett quote goes, when there's blood in the streets, buy, or be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. The fact that only 8% of people have a positive view of crypto kind of tells me it's a time to buy. But I still think prices are way too high, so I'm not really, I do a little bit of dollar cost averaging every week, but I'm not really going to go heavy on crypto anytime soon. I've been kind of getting a little bit more into gold, a little bit more into silver. Years ago, I used to kind of flip silver coins and things like that. I've always kind of had an interest in coin collecting, which has kind of led me into gold and silver. I'm kind of having a resurgence of my interest in these things, and when I talk about this online, a lot of people call me a boomer or call me a gold fag. But here's the thing you got to keep in mind, right? Like, diversification is good. All these people who are like only crypto, Bitcoin's better than gold. It's always good to diversify. And I feel like sometimes the crypto community becomes like cult-like. People treat it like it's a religion, and it's not, right? Gold, it needs manpower to pull out of the ground. There's an expense to pull it out of the ground. It has industrial purposes. It's had value. Societies have considered it to have value for over 5,000 years. And you got to look at the BRICS countries as well as China. They're buying up a shitload of gold. So there's recently been a lot of articles talking about how there was like a mystery buyer who bought 393 tons of gold over the past year or two. Nobody knew who it was. China recently came out and said it was them that was buying all of the gold. So China's buying a ton of gold. They don't want to hold dollars. They don't want to be involved with the U.S., and they're putting their money into gold. Also, I haven't really looked too much into this story, but I guess Russia is looking into rolling out petro gold so that they can trade oil for gold instead of dollars. And where this will get interesting, historically, if a country tries to go to the gold standard, or a country tries not to be part of the central banking system in the U.S. dollar, the U.S. government either starts a war or murders them. Look at Saddam Hussein. Look at Gaddafi. What is the U.S. going to do when China and Putin and Russia decide that they don't want to be part of the central banking system, and they don't want to be involved with the U.S. dollar? And I think it's a very real possibility and almost a certainty that there will be an alternative currency to the dollar in our lifetimes. Kind of jumping back into the car stuff, I didn't get a chance to really dive deep into this story, but Carvana shares apparently were down 42% today. That brings them down 92% on the year. Carvana has 10,400 employees. Anybody who works for them probably wants to start looking for another job. And think about it, if all those people lose their jobs, that's 10,400 people who are looking for jobs. That's 10,400 people who don't have the disposable income to support certain businesses and spend their money like they did before. And again, all of this has a ripple effect on the rest of the economy. Let's see here. While we're kind of talking about that, a friend of mine was considering hopping jobs and getting a new job. What my advice would be, or what I would be doing right now if I had a job, is, if I was with a company that I felt like was secure going into the recession, going into 2023, if I had a little bit of seniority, if I felt like my job was fairly secure, I would probably stay at my job. The time to job hop and take advantage of rising wages was the past 2 years. At this point, I think it's kind of too late. Again, things could get really ugly in 2023, and I wouldn't necessarily want to be the new person at a company when layoffs start to happen, because you're likely going to be the first person let go. Sorry, guys, just getting a drink of water here. So I saw an article. Apparently, there's some company called Rent the Runway where you can rent clothes. And apparently their sales are through the roof. People rent a lot of things. Some people rent furniture and TVs from, Value City or Rental Center, whatever it is. But now people are renting clothes. And in some ways, sometimes it's smart to rent something instead of buying something. But what this kind of screams to me is that people want to be middle class. We talked about this the other day. People who are poor like to consider themselves middle class, and people who are wealthy like to consider themselves middle class, because in today's day and age, a lot of people want to shame people for success or having wealth. So everybody considers themselves middle class, and I think even when people are experiencing poverty, they want to hold on to the idea that they're middle class, and maybe they do that by renting some nice clothes that they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. The next section of notes here I have is titled "The Fed Wants You to Lose Your Job." This is a little bit of a deeper discussion and kind of trying to understand what's going on with the Fed, what's going on with rate hikes. Is the Fed going to pivot? We are going to come back to this, but this is kind of a long discussion, so I just kind of wanted to wrap up a couple additional points here. Let's see. I saw another article today. Most Americans support Elon Musk's vision for a more transparent and free Twitter. That's certainly not what we hear on platforms like Reddit and a lot of social media platforms. That's certainly not the message that we hear from the media. But overwhelmingly, most Americans support free speech and support a more open Twitter. Let's see, there's more talk about TikTok being banned. I believe the Department of Justice, the State Department, and a lot of military branches have already banned, for example, soldiers can't have TikTok on their phones. Employees can't have TikTok on government phones. Within the past day or so, the state of Maryland actually banned state employees from having TikTok on their phones. I talked about this in previous videos, but the FTC actually recommends you not only delete TikTok from your phone, but they actually recommend you get a whole new phone entirely. I guess they think that maybe there's some code or some malware or something left behind. Within the past day or two, Elon Musk recently briefly lost, I think he gained it, but for a few hours or a day at least, he lost his title as the world's richest man. He lost his title to a gentleman named Bernard Arnault, and he is the chief executive officer of the parent brand of Louis Vuitton. I forget what the name of the parent brand is, LV Industries or something like that. But he, for a brief moment, was the richest man in the world, although I believe Musk has taken that back. I don't know if you guys saw this. Zelensky was named the Person of the Year. Definitely the person who received the most tax dollars from U.S. taxpayers. He's got the most money out of you and I. The list for runners up for Person of the Year, it was Zelensky. It always kind of strikes me weird how the Person of the Year can be like a group of people, right? The Person of the Year, the Time Person of the Year, to me signifies that it's a single person. But I think they had like the Iranian protesters. Hats off to them, props to them, but it's not really a single person. Who else was on the list? I think Elon Musk was on the list. and Ron DeSantis was on the list. The number of other people, if any of you guys want to drop in the comment section who they all were, you can drop them. It was kind of funny seeing kind of liberal media talking about this list, and when they came to Ron DeSantis, they were all like, "Why is he on the list? That's crazy." Da, da, da. You know, what the fuck has Zelensky done for you or I? I saw one of the commenters said something to the effect of, Zelensky's about to win World War III. He's about to win the craziest war ever against Russia, a country 10 times his size, a country 10 times his country's size. And you're comparing him to Ron DeSantis. There is zero chance that Zelensky and Ukraine are going to win a war against Russia. Most of the aid that we've sent to them has gone missing. We've recently learned that a lot of the weapons and kind of things that we send over there wind up going in the front door and out the back door where they're sold by criminals. This whole thing in Ukraine is a complete disaster. I think a lot of people are kind of waking up to it. I've seen some posts on social and things like that about Ukraine, and just from reading the comments, it's easy to see that a lot of people are realizing this for the big scam that it is. And it seems like the government's focus is going to, in the near future, be shifting from Ukraine to Taiwan. You know, there's already talk of let's take some of this money and focus away from Ukraine and start arming Taiwan. So it'll be interesting to see how the whole Ukraine situation plays out in 2023. This one isn't really a doom story, but I thought it was kind of funny. TGI Fridays is being sued. There's a big class action lawsuit against them because their mozzarella sticks don't contain mozzarella. I'm not sure if that's at the restaurant. I know this article was actually talking about you know how they make the appetizers in the grocery store that you can buy out of the freezer section. Turns out they contain cheddar, not mozzarella, so you can't call them mozzarella sticks. And while we're on this topic, I got a couple other quick kind of funny stories, just kind of involving how silly our world is and how silly the courts are. So I don't know if you guys have watched the Netflix show about the guy who tried to buy, what was it, like the Harrier Jet with Pepsi points. They wound up, he got enough points. Pepsi basically said, we're not going to give you a jet. This was clearly like a PR stunt and a joke. Why would you take this seriously? It wound up going to court. The judge said to this man, there's most reasonable people would not think that this was serious. You can't buy a jet. Well, in reality, as long as the jet's disarmed, you can buy a jet. But the judge said any reasonable person would realize that this wasn't serious. My dad was actually telling me about this the other day. So you guys may or may not be familiar with a company called the Online Trading Academy. They teach people how to trade stocks, and they have kind of a certain strategy for trading stocks that they utilize. And kind of their tagline was, we can teach anyone to trade. Well, they recently had to pay out, I believe it was $19 million. And somebody took them to court and said, you can't make the claim that you can teach anybody to trade. So the judge said to Online Trading Academy, could you teach a retarded person to trade? Now, first off, I thought we weren't supposed to say retarded anymore in 2022. That's literally what the judge said. I believe they were supposed to pay... they were initially going to have to pay about $50 million. They wound up settling on about $19 million. But I thought it was kind of interesting how Online Trading Academy can't say we'll teach anybody to trade because maybe there's a retarded person out there they can't teach to trade. Yet with the Pepsi story, no reasonable person would expect to buy a jet. It's just kind of funny how our legal system works. There was a story about how San Francisco, the police were going to roll out these killer robots that could go around killing people. I'm guessing like hostage situations and things like that. But after a whole lot of public pushback, they've pushed back their plan to roll out the killer robots on the police force. Now I'm starting to kind of get hoarse already, so we'll try to move through this kind of quick. But I wanted to talk. We have the last Fed meeting of the year next week. Everybody's kind of expecting a 0.5% rate hike, though it wouldn't be crazy to see a 0.75% rate hike. I believe we've had 4 0.75% rate hikes so far. One thing got to keep in mind, a lot of people were saying the Fed won't hike rates, the Fed won't hike rates, the Fed won't hike rates. Well, they are hiking rates, and it doesn't look like they're slowing down anytime soon. I recently read the Fed paper from last week. Here's what it comes down to. The Fed wants you to lose your job, and they're not going to let up on raising rates until you have lost your job. Everybody seems to be expecting a Fed pivot. Raising rates 0.5% as opposed to 0.75%. That's not a pivot. That's not a move in the right direction. They're still raising rates. Let's see. The Fed before said they wanted to get to a 2% inflation rate. And it's kind of weird, they kind of talk in very vague ways, and we don't always know what they mean, but they changed it from we have a 2% target inflation to we want to see 2% over time, and they don't explain what over time means. Let's see. They say they have to raise rates sufficiently to be restrictive. So they want prices to come down. They want job losses. Let's see. The Fed had anticipated that reopening the economy would bring down inflation. Clearly, that hasn't worked. One thing that'll be interesting to see, with China seemingly loosening up on their lockdowns, will that mean that more goods can flow to the USA? Well, we're not importing any goods anyways. But I think a lot of people in China have been locked down, probably haven't been consuming much. So when all these people in China come out of lockdowns and consume more, will that kind of make less goods, more people seeking the few goods out there, and continue to raise inflation even more? That's kind of unclear. Let's see. We haven't seen clear progress on slowing inflation, they said. Gas is down a little bit. There's maybe been a slight pullback in some areas, but inflation is still unreasonably high. Let's see here. The Fed seemed to signal they didn't see housing prices falling until next year, but again, they didn't specify how much. What did they say? They said personal consumption indicators are most important. So they're concerned about the price of haircuts, food, fuel, etc. They said that the demand for workers vastly exceeds the supply of workers available. And that's kind of a troubling thing too. Mike Rowe has been talking a lot about how a lot of young men who are working age men are just giving up and dropping out of the workforce. We kind of talked about how in earlier times in society, you worked hard because there was a reward at the end. You worked hard so you get the McMansion. You worked hard so you get a lake house. You worked hard so you get a couple jet skis, take a couple vacations a year. And today, no matter how hard you work, you can do everything right. You can be frugal. You can save. But the Fed and the government has destroyed the value of our dollar. And basically, the most you can hope for is just to kind of get by and not starve. And a lot of people are choosing to kind of opt out of that system. I mean, it's really apparent, even people who are just not being neats or I'm going to live on welfare, just look at, there's a huge uptick there's a huge uptick in interest of the number of people who want to move to rural areas and just kind of live a simpler life and kind of not be part of the system. You hear a lot more about things like homesteading now, right? A lot of people kind of want to drop out of the system. A lot of the absence of workers that we have in the economy right now are people who retired. We had 2 or 3 million people retire over the past couple of years, and those people aren't coming back to the workforce. You may have a couple people who come back and become Walmart greeters, but those people are retired. They're not coming back to the workforce. Let's see. Wages make up a significant cost. Okay, so here's something, right? Wages continue to rise. And that's troubling for the Fed. The Fed wants you to lose your job, and they've openly said they don't want wages to go higher. So even though inflation is high, they don't want your wages to go up to where you can afford the inflation. They're saying that a significant percentage of the costs that go into all of the items you buy are labor costs. So if labor costs continue to rise, if we're having to pay employees more to work, that means the price of the goods and services you buy are going to be more. I talked about the 3.5 million missing workers. Also, less workers are coming into the workforce. Less people are having kids. I think it's predicted that by the year 2030, I think 45% of women are going to be childless, right? I think a combination of things. People are choosing not to have kids, and or people can't afford to have kids. And so, birth rates are down. So eventually is going to come a day when maybe those of us who are millennials and Gen Zers, we're all old. We're going to need people to do services. We're going to need people working in healthcare. We're going to need people working in nursing homes, and there's going to be nobody there because nobody was born. Not only do we have less kids being born and less people coming into the workforce right now, but we're also, we have less immigrants, so that's less workers as well. So yeah, the whole system is kind of a mess. In one of these recent videos that I made, one of you guys had commented and said, "Do you think we'll see social unrest?" And it was kind of funny. My first thought was what do you mean? Will we see social unrest? I think when people hear social unrest, they picture, was it, what country was it? I don't know if it was Indonesia or something like that, but back during the summer, when everybody was starving in Indonesia or whatever country this was, I believe the government had made them stop using chemical fertilizers, and they needed chemical fertilizers to be able to grow enough food to feed everybody. So people were starving, their economy was melting down, and the president had to flee the country. Everybody like overran the presidential palace and was swimming in the pool and causing havoc in the place. I think when people hear social unrest, they're kind of picturing a situation like that. But look at the BLM riots of 2020 and 2021. I mean, we had entire cities burning. Is that not social unrest? I was a few months back. I was out in Seattle. And this is nothing new in Seattle, right? Seattle's been a nightmare for a while, but you see giant homeless camps. If you go out to like Anaheim and Los Angeles by the baseball stadium, you can literally drive for 10 or 15 minutes, and just like for a 10 or 15 minute drive nonstop, there's just like tent cities on your left and right. Kind of getting back to when I was out in Seattle, I mean, right down by the fish market, like the biggest tourist area in the city, people are shooting heroin and cooking heroin on spoons right there in the middle of the sidewalk as families are walking by. People were smoking crack in my hotel lobby, and I wasn't staying at some shabby hotel. I was staying at the Hilton. So, is that not civil unrest? If you look at cities like Portland and Seattle and San Francisco and Los Angeles and Chicago, you can walk into a store and steal up to $1,000 worth of goods, and the police won't arrest you. And even if the police did arrest you, the district attorneys won't prosecute you. Is that not civil unrest? I think a case just came to a resolution. I think the case was actually from about a year ago. But a guy was stealing power washers from Home Depot. Some elderly man who was working at Home Depot confronted him. And the guy, I forget how he killed him. I don't know if he pushed him over. But he killed the guy. He killed this old man working at Home Depot, all to steal a power washer. Like, is that not civil unrest? When you say, do you think we'll see civil unrest? I would say we've been seeing civil unrest for the past couple of years, and it's continuing to get worse and worse and worse. And again, like I've said throughout this video, you got to keep in mind, we haven't even hit the bad part yet. I know a lot of the numbers we're seeing are bad, but people haven't really started to feel pain. When you can't put food on the table, when you're losing your home, when you're losing your car, when you're losing your job, when everything around you is crumbling, that's when people are really going to start getting desperate, and that's when things are really going to start getting ugly. So when you say, do you think we'll see civil unrest? I would say we're already seeing civil unrest, it's scary to think about how much civil unrest we'll see when things get truly bad. I'm not saying things are going to be like out of The Walking Dead, but things could get very, very ugly. So here we are, 37 minutes into this video. I got to wrap this one up, guys. I'm pooped. I'm going to go smoke a joint and watch some TV. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Please drop a comment. I'd love to get some more interaction from you guys. Drop a comment. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Have you seen any articles? Any interesting articles? Have you heard any interesting stats? What are your predictions for the rest of the year? What are your predictions for the housing market? What are your predictions for 2023? What is the housing market like in your area? I'd love to hear from you guys and learn from you guys as well. So drop a comment down below. Say something. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below and ring the bell. As always, I appreciate you guys watching, and I will catch you on the next video.